All right, we're live with Dr. Alan Bittaker, and we're going to talk about energy today, energy flow. I'm going to read over your bio just slightly here. Dr. Alan Bittaker is it Bittaker? We've been friends
Bittaker,
for a long time. I'm just making sure I'm doing it right.
you're saying it right, dude.
I'll run with somebody's name for a while, and I'm like, hang on a second, I never checked in.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're good.
yeah, you're a trained network spinal practitioner, chiropractor, and somatic breathwork facilitator. You specialize in helping leaders master their energy so that they can break through blocks and navigate their work and relationships with flow. So you dig into spirituality, personal development, and embodiment to enhance the wellness of your clients. And I love this topic that we're going to dig into today.
Yeah,
It's
man.
something that I've been interested in a long time, and just playing around with myself, and to have someone who specializes in this is really, really cool. And uh, you're so. Can you explain to people? I think a lot of people think about energy as like, okay, I eat calories are a measure of energy,
Mm-hmm.
and and if I drink a Red Bull or drink enough coffee, I have energy, and this and that. Can you tell us? Just can you define energy for us here? Because uh,
Yeah.
I for a long time was very one dimensional in the conversation about it, and so I want to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, teach us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a complex conversation, obviously. And the most confusing thing about it is that energy is everything and everything is energy, right? So from I think it's like 4.6% of the physical universe is actually physical matter, right? So everything else is just like energy and vibration. So, in the way that I really direct my clients is through developing awareness around the body, mind, and soul, and the energies that encompass those three parts. And I think that is like one of the most important things that we can master as human beings. And when I say master, I just like, you know, it's a life's work of digging into and discovering. So when you talk about calories, that's more of a metabolic energy, and that's,
Yeah,
that's around the physical body. And then there's energy of the mind, and then there's energy of the spirit and the soul. So I think from a very simplistic standpoint, helping people break through and, develop embodiment so that they can discover and develop some type of coherence within their body, which is necessary to have access to the soul energy.
yeah. You
Right.
find a lot of people don't have uh, they don't have awareness around some pieces of energy. It's like just kind of walking around, and one day there's something that happens that goes, oh, what's that experience?
Yeah. And like one of the things that's like interesting is I would say many people are living within the mind. Right. So, um, and where does the mind live? Like people would guess that it's in the brain, but it's like everywhere, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
It's in the brain, it's in the spinal cord, it's in the body, um, it's in the ethers. So developing like more awareness around that and how to actually harness that for good is a very powerful endeavor.
yeah,
And I think when you do that, you start to realize that you're not your mind, and that's just a powerful
yeah,
powerful moment.
yeah.
And it's a powerful way to live.
What was that moment for you? What caused you to want to go down this path?
Oh man, what was that moment for me? Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've had that same question asked in a different way about like when that was more about like breaking in through my body and like kind of the shit that I've been bound up, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And experience is that I wasn't just my body, I wasn't just my mind. I had some pretty profound psychedelic experiences in college that, but it was kind of disjointed. And then I would say my most powerful first like spiritual experience was, I just graduated college. I was working. I started listening to this Eckhart Tolle Power of Now tape in my car. And I remember driving home after work one night, and it was dark out. And I don't know if have you ever listened to Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah.
His voice, how he speaks with so much space within his voice. It like brings you into this space, you know, and it creates so much presence. And I remember pulling into my driveway and just like having this hyper sense of presence, and like getting out of my car, and I was like almost freaked out. It's like because I was so aware of everything, I was like almost scared, like hyper vigilant a little bit.
Yeah. It was new.
It was
a lot
new.
of times I find this in the awareness game. You get a new expansion, or you're going into a new field, and it can feel wrong even, you know. I was like, oh, am I doing something wrong, or this is scary? And then for me, once I get into the space, I'm like, oh, that actually isn't so bad after all. It's actually really nice. But
once you do it
never
enough
had
times,
it before.
It shatters your old paradigm of what's real.
Yeah. So you were listening to that, and so you had some psychedelic experiences before that, and you said they were disjointed, and then you had this, and this sounds like it was a more tangible and sober experience.
Yeah. I think some of my psychedelic experiences were more around like just breaking the belief system of like, if this is what I'm experiencing as being real right now, how do I know what I'm experiencing in a regular day is real?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, how do I even know it's real?
Right.
And then I kind of just took those experiences like as being really cool and expansive, but nothing that really shifted the trajectory of my life that I knew of.
Mm-hmm.
And then this had some piece of philosophy around it, right? It was like directional, and that led me on the path of like experiencing the energy of my body, and I would say some sense of spaciousness. And in the spiritual traditions, the levels of waking up is like, one, noticing your breath, noticing the aliveness within your body, noticing the space, noticing spaciousness, and then noticing the aliveness within the space. And then there's like, you know, some steps above that of like witness, and then oneness. So I was kind of like in the first step of like, I can feel the aliveness within my whole freaking body. This is crazy.
Yeah, I've had that experience myself, and I've also witnessed other people have the experience of aliveness for the first time, maybe ever, or at least as an adult, and then watch their whole body wake up. It's like they look like a different person. You ever witnessed that? Like, it's like everything came back online. Dark cloud leaves. It's like, what is happening? And it's an amazing experience to witness.
Yeah, I think we probably have had quite a few of those in different ways. You know, like I experience that a lot on the table when I'm working on people on the table, doing body work, and that's and it can show up in many different ways. You know, lots of times that shows up within like having an emotional release, and after you have an emotional release, you then have access to that space that you've been ignoring for so long.
What would you tell somebody who is like, I don't really access my emotions? It's like I've got like this really narrow band of emotions, and I hear a lot of people go, I know it's probably a problem, but I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say to them is that I relate with them, because I used to really live my life from that space. And it's really safe. It's a safe way to like protect yourself from feeling things, or, it's a strategy that's probably not conscious. It's just like a embedded strategy for going through life to feel safe.
Mm.
And then I'd probably invite them to work with me. Have you experienced somatorespiratory integration, the SRI stuff?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, man, it is. I'd put it into the category of breath work. It's not always easy to do it. It's sometimes challenging to like get yourself into it because it's uncomfortable. And it's a process, and like this stuff in particular, so it basically means body breath integration. And it's I've got a book here actually. It's so it's like 12 Stages of Healing by Donnie Epstein. He's the guy who created Network Spinal, and it is literally 12 different rays of consciousness, 12 different like ways to connect with specific consciousness that is the spectrum of the human experience, all the way from suffering to enlightenment. And it's almost like a paradox that sometimes in order to really experience enlightenment, you have to first experience the suffering. And
yeah.
And that's the really like breaking in order to break through,
Yeah. I had a friend recently where she went into a DMT ceremony, and she had heard all of this information from people of like, oh, it was pure bliss and this and this and this. So she has this expectation of pure bliss. Doesn't happen. And then it's like almost like upset with it. But what people tend to leave out in those explanations of like, oh, well, I had to go through like this, I call it the small door. It's like I had to go through like this really small door. It was hard to fit through. It was hard to find, and it was hard to fit through. And then my body didn't want to make it through. And then I finally got through the other side. And then I was crying, and there was all these emotions. And then eventually I got to this moment of bliss where I was like, oh, it can be this easy. And it is that is cool to point out, like the way through all this stuff is actually through it, not like this brings up for me like the idea of spiritual bypass. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, I see the end result, so how do I skip all the pain and suffering and all that to get there? So in these 12 steps, okay, so this is the guy that came up with Network Spinal.
Yeah.
So like when if I go and hang out with a bunch of people who are professionals in different areas, lots of chiropractors I come across. And I'm like, they're like, oh, do you do any chiropractic? I'm like, oh, just network. And like a lot of times they're like, oh, the weirdos. Like you hang out with the weirdos.
Yeah.
And
you hang out with the cool weirdos though, at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. So yeah, can you tell us more about the vibrations? Like, so that's obviously in alignment with Network. I mean, the guy who wrote the book, but and do those 12 different levels, they coincide with like those levels of awareness you were talking about? Yeah,
absolutely. So and that's the cool thing about it. That's what makes me really feel that's one of the things that really allows me to trust in it, is that it's very coherent with all of the spiritual traditions of enlightenment. And the highest forms of enlightenment is, in my opinion, more about wholeness, right? Being able to like honor the suffering, honor the people who are in like, I don't know of all the levels. I think about Ken Wilber's maps a little bit more than me, but like, you know, turquoise, when you're in turquoise, you can actually honor and step into what do they call it? Being a spiral wizard or something. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar. Yeah. I mean, yes.
Spiral dynamics, basically.
I've actually never heard spiral wizard before, which I love that. But yeah, like you get to a point where, you integrate everything from before.
And you can actually honor all of the pieces. And
because people have, Ken Wilber goes into this and they talk about this in spiral dynamics, is that as people go through, and you can see this in like an easy example of this would be like in fitness. So it's like, you know, they start off with like a boot camp, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I do like push-ups and jumping jacks, and I love having someone motivate me from the front. I need someone to do that. And then we're like, oh, we're just having fun. And then they might go from boot camp to CrossFit. And it's like much more competitive. And but it's you have to know more. It's a little more advanced. But once
you become certified as a CrossFit coach, and then you have to put the workouts together.
But once you start CrossFit, boot camp's stupid.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like,
so is isolation workouts too, right?
Yeah. Bodybuilding stupid, boot camp is stupid, and then you get to the next level, and you go to the next level, and then you get to the one point in fitness, you're like, oh, you know what, the boot camps are actually pretty good. If that's what somebody wants, and that's the beginning of their journey, fuck it. Going for a walk for 10 or 15 minutes and drinking a glass of water might be awesome. And so, like for me, as a, you know, going through the world of fitness, you know, there was a time where I thought that telling people to go for a walk and drinking water was dumb because they should be lifting weights or something.
Yeah.
And then, you know, now that I've been in it for 20 plus years, I look at it and go, man, most people should probably just drink some water and go for a walk. And so that's the beauty of the spiral dynamics of like, hey, keep going, but each level tends to judge where they came from, and until a point, and then you go, oh, I can appreciate the whole thing here.
And the cool thing is like, I feel like it takes that amount of background awareness of the spiritual waking up process to get to the level of awareness that you're at, because we know that people who have been in fitness for 20 years who are still like, this is the way, and every other way is stupid.
Yeah,
it's really powerful that we can apply that to, like, 'cause I apply that to nutrition, and we can apply that to like everything. You're like, well, this diet was perfect at this point in time during the season of my life, you know, for this type of person, but you know, right now intermittent fasting might not work very well. Be able to see all of it.
I like to oversimplify things, like talking about consciousness, levels of consciousness. All this is just perspective. Like a lot of times in psychedelics, we get to visit a perspective. It's like, oh wow.
Yeah,
it's like you get to visit this picture behind me, and then you come back and you weren't able to stabilize that perspective. It's like, oh, I kind of remember, but it doesn't stabilize. I think that's the trouble with a lot of people who may do a lot of psychedelics but not a lot of time in integrating, is it's like hooked on that fresh perspective that feels there's a sense of relief that comes with holding, like visiting a perspective, like going on a vacation, but integrating and actually stabilizing that perspective and throughout an entire day of your life. That's where the work is, huh?
They say stabilizing states into traits.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard that. I like that. Stabilize states into traits.
Yeah. I mean, because like a psychedelic experience, mostly we're just accessing specific states of consciousness, states of experiences, and being able to stabilize that and be able to reach that, like being able to reach a state of bliss, like right now, that's like, that's epic.
Yeah. Take a few breaths, and you know, there's like I notice I hang out at a higher octave than I used to. And it's a big enough of a gap.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like, oh, it's easy to notice that now. Whereas like in the beginning, I was like, I wouldn't be able to tell that much of a difference between like a year ago and now. But if I look back 5 years to now, I'm like, dude, completely different energy, just completely stabilizing a whole different energy field. And I've also learned not to try to push it too hard either. Whereas I was trying to push it really hard and having expectations of stabilizing a perspective, and it was like more of like, you know what, let's just take our time here.
Yeah, I mean, the first point I want to make is like, it's really all about how much energy we have access to. And so there's no lack of energy. It's just like, how much access do we have to it? And every thought, every emotion, every state is congruent with a certain amount of energy. So, and that's the powerful thing about like going through an emotional release, is it's bound up energy and it gets released, and then we now have access to that. And in terms of like kind of like self-judgment of like, oh, I'm not moving fast enough, or I'm not in the state that I want to be in. I think that one of the most powerful tools and acronyms that I've learned and I've been teaching is an acronym called, that's AAA. It's awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance. And I think you've probably had this experience. Anytime that we've, like made something wrong or bad, especially within ourselves, our body automatically goes into defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it binds that energy even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having a low day and then judging yourself on top of that is not going to allow that to process any quicker.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So that's what these things, the stages are really powerful, especially in the lower levels, and allowing you to go through and feel those things and release them without judgment. And then and applying that AAA to all perspectives, even if you just have a DMT experience, and being aware of that, acknowledging that, and accepting that as part of reality too.
There's one thing I've really noticed is if when I come across someone who I've noticed there's certain people where it's almost as if it's the first response to everything is there's something wrong with me. And then when that perspective is what's being held, or that's the filter that's being held as they're navigating life, and then especially when they start getting into personal development work, I start working with somebody and I go, oh, they're like, it's like we keep on, every time we try to work on something, it's because something's wrong. I go, well, that's never going to work. And so I really like your AAA model, where it's the level of acceptance. So I think most people are familiar with, okay, I've got new awareness now, it's like, oh, okay. And a lot of people get off on that. There's an awareness high. It's like, oh, I've got a new awareness. And a lot of people mistake awareness for healing. And I've witnessed this with certain programs and it's not the program's fault. A lot of times it's just it happens when there's like large groups going through a program because they're not able to catch everything. So I think that's a big part of it. It's why like smaller like things where people can like interact more directly with a coach. But they and I had a friend, she made a post about this recently that just put it so well, is people, it's almost like they fall in love with their wounds. And so like, oh, I have this awareness of like, yeah, this is why I'm like this. And then it's like they keep on referencing that moment in time that created who they are now. And it's like, it's like they just keep on like telling everyone about their wound and reminding themselves of the wound.
It's a diagnosis.
So they're like focused on it's
like a diagnosis.
And what I'm experiencing is people are, because I get high off of it. I get excited. I was like, oh, I get to do something about it. But what I'm experiencing with other people is they're treating the awareness as if it is the healing. And like, oh, I
It's-
did, like, that was the hard part, and it's not the hard part.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much power to how we remember things,
Oh,
you know, and how we choose to remember things, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
if that's my story and I'm married to it, like, am I, and on some level, you know, if they keep coming back to it, it's probably because they're not actually willing to accept it.
Yeah. Interesting.
For what it is.
So it's awareness, acknowledgement.
Yep. And acceptance.
So how does somebody, the acceptance part can be like really tricky. Like, okay, all right, I'm ready to accept it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? So, accepting it, you know, and that's like a lifelong process sometimes. And it comes so much more easier with actually acknowledging it. Right. So acknowledging it means to actually feel it. Right. So that's the difference between awareness and acknowledgement. Like, I'm going to be aware of my story and be aware of how I got fucked up at this point in time. And, you know, my mom and dad did this to me. And that's why I'm like this right now. That's being aware of it. And then acknowledging it is actually experiencing that. Right. And fully having that experience. And, you know, within that, we know that, like, stories bind energy, right? And really your identity binds energy too. And, like, who do you identify as? So
spiral wizard.
So yeah, it's like fully experiencing it allows, and sometimes it's like every day, just allowing yourself to go into it a little bit at a time to, you know, acknowledge it and experience it until you get to a point of acceptance and be like, and acceptance, here's the thing too, is around this whole concept, you're talking about, like, it's almost like a pro peace versus anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone's like themselves off they are for cool. I think we're back.
Okay, we lost you at anti-war versus pro-peace.
Pro-peace, yeah. So, you know, if you're getting into this personal development and you're really, or even healing work, if you're really coming from the concept of healing yourself, it's initially off the bat, you're also not accepting yourself. So, you know, like, if your internal compass, or like your premise is on, like, I actually want to just experience more of myself, and I want to experience more of the world, and I want to, like, discover myself and just express at my highest level, versus I want to, like, heal this shit that's wrong with me. Two different ways of going about it, you know?
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who they're like, okay, I see how this works with, like, mental, like, psycho-emotional wounds, like emotional, all that, but you know what? My fucking back hurts, and you know, that needs to be healed. And does the same approach work for a physical experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So an example of acceptance of that would be like, if your back never felt better, could you love yourself anyways? Could you still love your life? Yeah. And when it's like
simple,
it's like,
yeah, I want people to really get that. It sounds so simple and short, but that's solid. That's really solid advice.
And it's like dating, you know, it's like, if you're attached to going home with this girl, it doesn't play out as well if you don't give a shit, you know, like if you love yourself anyways.
Yeah, it's well, the whole process is not as fun.
Yeah,
like
right.
you know, it's like the only way you get to enjoy yourself is if you like attain the goal, right?
Yeah.
But if you're gonna enjoy it from the very beginning to the very end, no matter what happens, yeah, it's way more fun. And I find it actually doesn't matter. But uh, yeah, yeah. So tying in, so these 12. I want to go back to this 12 steps. Is it
Yeah,
12,
yeah.
12 different
Because you asked
vibrations?
the question. 12 stages.
It's 12 stages. What are these 12 stages? And is it something we it's like, okay, I have awareness of the stage, I'm going to stabilize it?
Yeah, good question about that. I think just like spiral dynamics, it makes it easier when you can see the whole map and you can really kind of identify where you're at currently. And I'll take you through kind of like stage 1 to stage 12. And I'm not going to name all of them, but the process starts with I am suffering, right? And what suffering is at a core level is disconnection. So I'm separate from, right? And sometimes that sounds like you hear it in clients or sometimes in relationships. Like with that to this, which are or sometimes is the base acknowledgement. Sometimes it feels like
All right,
I'm alone
sorry.
in this. Sometimes I feel, yeah.
I
Did we
lost
get
you
cut
like
off?
the last 20, 30
Okay.
seconds.
Yeah, I could see myself moving, but I couldn't see
Which
you. Okay.
This will be for the live. It kind of sucks, but
Mhm.
it'll get edited on the back end.
Okay.
But
so it's like basically stage 1 is suffering or disconnection.
mm-hmm.
And then stage 2 is about polarity. And that is really like the healing thing, you know, like this person's going to heal me, or this person's why I feel this way, or this thing is why I feel this way. You know, it's my mom and my dad's fault. Stage 3 is
damn parents.
I know. Yeah.
How dare you bring me here?
Fuck me up. Couldn't deal with your own problems. Now I have them. Why weren't you perfect? Stage 3 is about actually realizing that it's your own pattern. So stage 3 is being stuck in a pattern. And, you know, that worst. So here, I just also want to paint the picture before I go further into this, is we could be in stage 3 in our business. We could be in stage 6 in our intimate relationships. You know, generally we gravitate towards, and this is broken up into the body, mind, and spirit. So stage 1 through 3 is more about the body, and that's more about the survival energy, as in like, you know, like surviving and reacting. And then the mind is more about thinking and optimizing. So I know it's a little bit complex. So after you realize that you're stuck in a perspective, and if you've been there long enough, you go into stage 4, which is claiming your power. Right. So it's like being stuck in a perspective. It's like, fucking, I always let this happen to me. I'm like continually like, this is where I'm always at in life. No matter, you know, how much business development I do, my business is always, I've got, you know, $5,000 in my bank and that's it.
I always cap out at the same amount of revenue every month. I keep dating the same girl. I think it's different at the beginning. Then we break up and it's like, oh shit. Like, oh,
I just did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone can identify with one of those two. It's like, oh, I'm capped out at a certain amount of money, or I keep dating the same person, or yeah.
And stage 4 would be like a very powerful connection to like actually choosing to break up with somebody. It's all about claiming your power. Or it could even show up as reinvesting in a relationship at a new level.
Mm-hmm.
Like I give my power away in this relationship, and that sabotages it. Right? She doesn't respect me.
Mm-hmm.
So stage 4 is about claiming your power. The breath exercise for 4, 5, 6, and 7, which are more the transformative mind harnessing exercises, are more in the nose, out the nose, which have more of a transformative nature. Whereas stages 1, 2, and 3 are more about embodiment and more about breaking through emotional blocks. And that's more of a nose mouth pattern, which is more grounding.
Got it.
Stage 5 is about learning the lesson. It's called merging beyond the illusion. It's like, oh, my parents fucked me up because I needed to like go through this shit, and now I can give a specific gift to the world. You know, it's when our wounds start to become our gifts. Stage 6 is about being ready and actually like claiming what's yours. 7 is about resolution, a sense of resolution. And then before I go into the awaken stages, well, I'll just say, I'll go through them first. 8 is about spaciousness and really feeling the space. 9 is about receiving love and receiving the space. 10 is about like ascension, which has a and I'll just say all of these breaths have a specific energy to them. You do it, if you do it right, you can, even if you're in a room and someone does it, you can feel the energy of it. 10 is about ascension. 11 is about descension. It's like if 10's climbing up the spiritual mountain, 10 is climbing back down to give your gifts. I'm sorry, 10's going up, 11's going down, and 12 is about community, giving the gifts, and really realizing that the biggest gift that we can give to this world is by receiving the world or by receiving other people's gifts.
Love that. That all makes sense. It's like, oh, I've seen that progression before.
Yeah.
And there's actual, well, that's what's cool about a lot of these models is that, and a lot of people, I don't think realize this, is it's very predictable. It's when you, if you really sit down and look at it, and then if you're a coach and you're working with people, you go, oh, I see where they're at. That's where they'll go next. I may not know exactly how it's going to happen, but it's like, oh, this is where we're taking things.
Yeah, and people have their own specific tendencies. Some people you may know are very stage 2. They always want to argue with you and prove, like that polarity. They always want to be like polarizing.
Yeah.
And you can use these things to your advantage too. You can like consciously polarize people. No, I'm right.
Never done that before.
Yeah. And I think the most powerful thing about these, it's just like knowing the map beyond doing the breath work or anything like that, is like knowing where you're at and being able to have the awareness to be like, fucking, I'm very stage 2 with this. Like, okay, all right, now I'm here. Like, at least self-identifying it, and then that's when you're aware, and you can acknowledge and accept that.
How long does it take to work through something? So you gain awareness around something, and then
it can be a moment, it can be a whole season, it could be a couple months. I would say most of our culture is probably in stage 1, 2, or 3 consistently their whole life.
Yeah.
Suffering is a very it's a sense of gravity for a lot of people. It's like how they know. It's a way of knowing that they're going to get energy from it. It's not the best energy, and it's not that like highest level, but it's at least consistent. It's a pattern that it's
it feels safe.
It feels safe. Yeah.
I've had that experience. I've had that experience quite a bit where it's like I wake up one day and I feel amazing. And then I realize that I felt amazing for like so many. It's like, when was the last time I had like quote unquote a bad day? I don't think that I've had one. Like, and it,
Mm-hmm.
and what it is that a perspective has been stabilized, but it's I forget where I was going with it, but
Yeah, and along that lines, I would say one of the challenging pieces for someone who is actually feeling good, and they're
oh
I'll finish this off quickly. It's like, well, what's the point of going to suffering? You know what I mean? And sometimes that when we feel good, when we have higher states of energy, and we're like, I don't really want to go down there and experience that because, like, I feel really good right here. And then under the radar, that stuff can really start to accumulate.
mhm.
And the long stories, it starts to pull us down. So there's a lot of, and psychedelic experiences along the lines of this. It's like, ayahuasca, that will really show you what's under the radar. Reveals it to you and allows you to experience it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's I think there's two pieces that I like what you're saying is a lot of times we feel good for a long time. There's just something that hasn't been uncovered. But it's I had something recently where it just kept coming up and I was like, this ain't real. I'm gonna I can judo this. Fuck no. The thing is, like, I know better.
Boom.
I know better. I know better. I'm like, you can't judo that shit. Like, you got to go through it. You just got to, like, the answer is sitting right there. And until I follow through on the message I'm receiving, I'm gonna keep getting that one. And my experience of it is just the suffering can just every day amplifies a little more.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit harder to go to bed. It's a little bit harder to get out of bed. And I go, all right, I need to take action on this item. Take action on the item, and all of a sudden, peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
And it gets wild. It gets wild in there, but it's but and at the same time is I'll get into a rhythm of doing a lot of work, and then I've got a lot of nice peace and tranquility. And it's almost like I need to drop a pebble in the pond just to see what happens. I'm like, it's like it's too easy. So there's a part of me that gets addicted. What I've noticed is I think Eckhart Tolle talks about this is like getting addicted to the pain body of like I'm so used to suffering. Who am I without the suffering?
Yeah.
And so I've taken such long periods of time away from suffering, or where there's just so little suffering going on in my mind and my body. And then I'm like, almost like, well, I kind of miss the suffering because I'm just so used to it. And so end up throwing shit in there.
Hey, you cut out for a moment.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, being addicted to suffering, it's like I'll like generate things in my external world. They're going to cause problems so that I have to deal with them because I'm the mind. For some reason, there's a pattern of like, if there's no suffering, then there's something wrong. And because going for long periods of peace and tranquility is just strange. But learning to go, okay, it's okay to just have peace and tranquility. I don't need to be suffering in order to have an identity. And at the same time, being aware enough of like, am I just bypassing with like suppressing and finding peace and tranquility through suppression? Or am I actually allowing things to rise up, bubble up, and work through them?
Oh. That's what I really like about these is you can feel your sadness without actually having a problem. And honestly, like some of the highest levels of like, I'm curious what your thought on this, but like the highest levels of consciousness, there's a really almost like a heaviness to it sometimes, like a bittersweetness, where, and I've seen this before, where there's this like emotional circle graph that I've seen before, and there's like gratitude, like there's the bigger emotions, and then there's like the micro emotions within it, and grief is actually a micro emotion of gratitude, and like being so present and grateful that you're actually grieving the moment as you're experiencing it. And yeah, but it's like this bittersweet, like, holy fuck feeling.
Yeah, I was almost every time I've had, well, every experience I can remember where I'm experiencing a lot of grief, gratitude is just, it's right there. It's right there with it. Yeah, but we avoid grief a lot. A lot of people avoid grief. I avoid. I know I avoided grief a lot in my life.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get a good cry in.
It's not a. It's almost like I know, right? Like, and some of my most powerful moments in my life has been after a deep cry, and I haven't had many of those.
No. Yeah.
Like two.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I was just talking to the crew about that the other day. I did a combo, and just like pouring out of my eyes during the ceremony, and I was like, oh fuck, I needed that. I needed a good cry. It's like, yeah, it's still something I want to get good at, is learning how to, I don't know if it's access it or if it's just one of those things where there's not a lot for me to like grieve right now, but yeah, having access to the full range of emotions, that's something that is continual work for me.
Yeah, me too. So I haven't really been in practice for a little bit, but one of the most extreme shifts that I really experienced throughout practicing, and this will actually tie into one of your questions here. One of the most extreme shifts I experienced while I was practicing is having that emotional bandwidth like stretched like this, and then being able to just like wherever I want. And that's how the 12 stages overlap with care. So, and I'll give a quick description of care. Essentially, care, network spinal care, is a chiropractic modality in the sense that it uses the spine and the nervous system as its primary focus. And what happens when we have an experience that we become fragmented from or with, like an experience is too much and we have a trauma, right? We don't have enough energy to process that experience and gain wisdom from it. So we become disjointed from the experience and traumatized from it. And based on the experience, we have our body will distort in a specific way. And the ways the body distorts is, pretty textbook. And for example, and distortion doesn't really sound great with this example, but like gratitude, the body moves like this. It's the universal language for gratitude. Your subconscious knows that. If you see a cartoon, someone's doing this, you have a sense of gratitude. You know that.
Yeah, for those that are just listening and can't see this, he's got his arms up. I would say like gratitude. It's easy to see at a concert, like, or this DJ just killing it, and I'm like fucking arms up, like much gratitude. Yeah. You can't stop it.
Yeah. And it's just a universal unspoken language. And you can even see it in animals. I yell at my dog, right? And his tail tucks and his chin tucks. That's how his body distorts to like fear or being a victim. So within network spinal care, there's basically mapped out places of the spine and where to access in order to allow that person to really feel that distortion, in a way of, just like along the conversation, it's like, it doesn't feel bad to cry if you have permission to cry, or whatever the scenario is. If you're, and especially if that's the purpose of you being there, is to really feel who you are and experience yourself. It's a really beautiful thing. So basically, using that place in the spine that is anchored to that distortion and creating awareness through your hands and your fingers as I'm working on clients allows them to feel that. And then on top of that, this is more of the quantum care, the energetic care, is feeling the energies of these 12 stages. And so me as a practitioner, and this is a high level conversation, right? Like,
yeah.
Me is like, it's like, this is the law of entrainment, right? Is when someone walks into a room and say Mike Bledsoe's in the room and he's smiling and he's joking around with everyone in the room. When you walk into the room, you actually just entrained. We're on.
Still
It
streaming.
happens.
All right. You walk into the room.
Everyone entrains to that vibe, right? So basically there's this field between us, right? We've got our bound energy, which is us, and we've got our co-resonance, which is our like field, which is a resonating information of our bound energy. And as a practitioner, I have to be hyper focused of what I'm thinking about, how I'm feeling, what emotion am I generating, all of these things, right? So essentially the process is me assessing where that person is, and then knowing that they've got a lot of energy bound up in those stages, right? And then allowing myself to feel that as well, to entice their energy, and then go to that place, which is a place of on the spine, which is a place of potential, and allow them to feel that with that energy that they have access to.
Mm-hmm.
So this for me, like doing that, like, every day for 5 hours a day of like, I'm gonna feel survival energy. At the same time, I'm feeling awaken energy, and I'm gonna feel these together as I'm making this contact. I'm gonna feel the feeling of coherence. Like, and when I'm practicing, sometimes I even say that, I'll be like, emotion, upper mental, emotion, feel both of them at the same time, coherence, make the contact, because I know the way that I'm feeling is being generated and received in the way that they're feeling. And it creates huge breakthroughs for people. It creates also a new awareness around the energy behind all of the things that they're doing. So
yeah. And my first experience of network was really powerful, and it was so gentle in the space that I was like, oh, not much changed. I'm driving home afterwards. I'm just like grateful for the person next to me in their car. I don't know them. I'm just like, oh, I was like, oh, beautiful people. I love everybody. I was like crying, just like this huge level of acceptance. And then I got home, and I got to my bedroom, and I started to change, and I fucking just cried for like 30 minutes. It was just all of a sudden all this stuff was moving. I was like, and at that point I hadn't cried in a long time. Maybe it'd been a year or something. I had like a really good boohoo, and I let it loose and just slept like a baby that night. And then the next day woke up feeling like $1,000,000. And yeah, there was some block in there, and that got moved. And yeah, it's really, really powerful. I keep getting surprised by, discovering new modalities and working with new people. And it's like, holy shit, that was like it wasn't like a hard session. It wasn't like someone had to dig in on me. It wasn't anything. It wasn't intense as a conversation. It wasn't intense physically. It was really just hang out and do a few things on the table and take a few breaths, and then, all right, see you later. It's like just explosion.
You use that philosophy in your business too, don't you? Like it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to like bust your ass all day every day in order to make money.
Yeah. Like,
you can have fun and do it too.
Yeah, we should be having fun. If I'm not having fun, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I'm staying with one of my clients this weekend, and we were talking about financial goals. And I was like, yeah, the goal is actually let's hit that number without logging any more hours of work. He's like, yeah, let's hit that number, but let's still knock off at 5 or 6 p.m. and get our workout and get our work in and chill out and have a good time, be with friends, all that kind of stuff. But it's a continual process as an entrepreneur to increase your impact, while, like, even for me, is learning to decrease my output. It's like, okay, I'm going to decrease my personal output. I'm going to find high leverage, high strategy priorities to really hit. When these things happen, it creates a really big impact. And so
that was my actual goal for this year, was more impact and less effort.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful goal. And it can be challenging because, I know the way I was raised is very similar to the way a lot of other Americans are raised, and that is work harder. It's like, oh, you want to double it? Well, you got to work twice as hard, all that kind of stuff. So it's people tend to think very linear. How do we say that? Linearly?
Linear.
I chose a hard word to say. In a linear fashion.
Streamline that thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a linear fashion. I mean, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And then you get out into the world and you go, oh, like you might go from 2 to 6 to 4 to 10. And then, yeah.
With these stages of healing, it's a similar thing.
Yeah.
It really is. Sometimes, just realizing that, then there's certain patterns that we all have. Like a big one for me is when I'm like going on stage to speak, or if I'm like going on someone's podcast. I didn't do this today actually, but and I think it's because it's more embedded within me. I'll do a stage 4 because there was this old story that I used to have that I like couldn't speak in front of people, like like there was kind of that stuff, and then it got to a point where it wasn't a mental story, it was just a physical reaction, right? And I don't know if you've experienced that in speaking on stage and such, where your body starts to shake, you feel like you're losing control of it. And so stage 4, really empowering, like claiming your power back type of exercise. And it looks crazy, it looks a little bit weird. I think you would actually love this. I want to show it to you, Mike. I want to have you do it.
Okay.
It's
perfect. As long as it's weird.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's challenging, and it took me a long time to like actually accept that it's gonna, like, I'm gonna do it anyways, even though it's hard and weird. You breathe in one nostril and out the same nostril, and I've got a deviated septum. My nose is all jacked, so when I do it, I open up my sinus like this, and I close this nostril. I go, and then I go to this nostril and I open this one up. So if you wanted to shortcut this exercise, you could just do nostril breaths. But the real, I really enjoy doing the real exercise, and it looks like this.
How long do you go for?
If you're really like, I've done it in rooms of 100 people before where everyone's doing it for, it's like more of a Tony Robbins vibe where like you're just like, you don't want to do it anymore and you just keep doing it. But when I do it, I generally do it that quick.
So it's in and out, in and out.
Yeah. So and when I do it, I kind of keep a cadence.
Like that.
Yep.
But way harder.
But wait, it's
not harder, but bigger.
Like the breath of fire. It's a little bit like the breath of fire.
Got
it's
it.
Like it's a full. Have you done the Osho meditation?
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that.
Okay.
And then in the exercise, if you want to get like intense with it, you can say things like "enough of this." You can kind of like scream things, and so like when I have clients do it, I generally like, and I do this in my office a lot. I like, you've worked with Dr. Matt before, and I like how it's freaking powerful to integrate this breath work with the care and like bringing someone up on the table and being like, start going with this, and then like leading them, and like as they get to a certain point, because kind of once you get to a certain point, you feel a little bit like unstoppable, and you don't really give a shit what someone thinks if you scream something crazy. So just having them scream like enough of this, and then like silence, and then you really, really get a sense of like your own physical power,
I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna get you on the phone and have you walk me through it again. But
yeah, absolutely. And like, so for example, that's the tool that I generally use if I'm about to go on stage and I'm feeling my body kind of like go haywire, like shaking and stuff. I'm like, I know that this is an old story. I know that this is just like not actually who I am. Like, I'm going to go take care of this and go to the bathroom and just rip that exercise. And then I have just a new sense of like deciding who I am and who I'm showing up as,
Yeah, I love that. You got a program starting soon?
I do. Yeah. It's my first time doing it. I'm super excited about it. The first round is going to be 2 months, and I'm hoping to get a group of 10 to 20 people, somewhere around there. And it's going to be, in kind of the process of how this started is when I took a break from practice during COVID-19 stuff, which that's a different story. Most chiropractors didn't take a break.
No.
Yeah, which is whatever. I have no judgment on either choice. When it was happening, I was almost judging myself a little bit about it, but it's like, that's whatever. It's what I chose to do. And about half my clients, I gave them the option of coaching with me, right? And like doing the somatic breath work over the phone, really going into some of these frameworks for, developing wholeness and moving through life, and like, what's the energy they have around their business? What's the energy they have around their relationships? What are these blockages? What's holding them back? And I already knew that like this, groundwork philosophy and coaching is a complete game changer to the care that I'm delivering. It was, but it was something that I would personally never have been taught how to like coach my clients on how to receive care, right? And care is weird a little bit, right? People are like, I don't know what to think about. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
had that experience. I'm like, I'm laying on the table. I'm like,
am I doing it right?
I'm just here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so throughout this process of coaching my clients, I'm like, man, it would be so cool to like actually take people through a program, and like a transformative program around all of the pillars of this work. And And it'd also be really dope to access people who are outside my local community and really be able to help them in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the program. It's all of these concepts. It's basically going through this waking up process with, it's like the waking up, showing up, and growing up, all three of those.
Yeah. Love that. Where do people find out more?
Okay, and we're back.
And we're back. All right,
okay.
Where can people find out about it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best way to find out about it is to follow me on Instagram or Facebook. So I'm going to be launching, and the next June 1st is when I'm going to launch enrollment, and then June 15th is when the program's going to start.
Cool.
Yeah, just reach out to me if you're interested.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's Dr. Alan Bittaker. So DrAllenBittaker. And then on Facebook, I'm Alan Bittaker. But I'm sure if you put doctor in front of it,
look him up.
Me too.
Yeah, if you're watching the Facebook Live, I'll do a little tag in there. I'll go back and do that, and that'll be taken care of. Man, thanks for joining us today. Real pleasure. Dude, yeah.
Such a pleasure, man. It's
good, man.
Kicking it with you.
Yeah.